The people who think they've left the past behind are often the least prepared when the past quietly returns, happier than ever. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country below. And if you believe dignity is the strongest revenge, hit like and subscribe. Now, back to her story. The ballroom of the Evergreen Manor shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers that reflected warm afternoon sunlight across polished marble floors. White roses framed the ceremony aisle. Live violin music floated gently through the air, and the quiet laughter of arriving guests blended with the clinking of champagne glasses. Everything about the wedding spoke of elegance. Everything felt carefully planned. Everything reminded Ryan Mitchell that life had rewarded him exactly the way he had always imagined. Standing beside him was Claire Morgan, his fiancée. She adjusted the sleeve of his charcoal suit before smiling. "You've checked your watch at least 5 times. Ryan laughed softly. "I guess I'm more excited than I thought. It's not even our wedding." "I know. Then why do you look nervous?" He shrugged. "Old friends. Old memories." Claire slipped her arm around his. "Well, today is about celebrating someone else's future." Ryan nodded. "And ours." Around them, former classmates, business associates, and mutual friends greeted one another after years apart. Conversations moved naturally from careers to families, from vacations to engagements. Then one familiar voice interrupted. "Ryan." He turned to see an old college friend approaching with 2 champagne flutes. "It's been forever." "It really has." After exchanging greetings, the friend lowered his voice. "You know Naomi is coming today, right?" Ryan blinked. "Naomi Carter?" His friend nodded. "She accepted the invitation." Claire looked at Ryan with quiet curiosity. "Your ex-wife?" "Yeah. I didn't know you two still had mutual friends." "We don't." Ryan accepted the champagne glass, but didn't drink. He hadn't expected to hear Naomi's name. "Not today. Not after all these years." Claire smiled reassuringly. "Does it bother you?" He thought for a moment before answering. "No. You seem surprised." "I am." He had spent years convincing himself that chapter of his life had closed for good. Whenever anyone mentioned the divorce, he always offered the same simple explanation. "We wanted different things." It sounded reasonable, comfortable, easy to accept. Most people never asked another question. Another guest joined their conversation. "I heard Naomi started some consulting work after the divorce." Ryan nodded politely. "So I heard. I guess she's doing all right." Someone else quietly added, "I don't think she ever remarried." A sympathetic silence followed. Claire gently squeezed Ryan's hand. "I hope she's found peace." "I'm sure she has." His answer came almost automatically. Deep down, Ryan imagined Naomi living a quiet, ordinary life somewhere far removed from the ambitions they once shared. He never imagined anything more. Wedding coordinators continued guiding guests toward their assigned tables while photographers adjusted lighting near the flower-covered altar. Laughter echoed beneath the vaulted ceiling. Servers offered sparkling water and champagne with effortless precision. Everything flowed smoothly, until one coordinator approached Ryan with a polite smile. "Mr. Mitchell?" "Yes. I thought you might like to know." Ryan waited. "Ms. Naomi Carter has just arrived." Without thinking, he turned toward the ballroom entrance. Several nearby guests instinctively did the same. The grand wooden doors slowly opened. Naomi stepped inside wearing an elegant sapphire blue dress that moved gracefully as she walked. Her natural curls rested softly against her shoulders, and the afternoon sunlight caught the gentle confidence in her smile. She looked neither anxious nor uncomfortable. She looked peaceful. The room quietly noticed. "So that's Naomi. She looks incredible. She came alone. I guess nothing really changed after the divorce." Ryan watched her from across the ballroom. For reasons he couldn't explain, she didn't resemble the woman he remembered. She carried herself with the calm confidence of someone who no longer needed anyone's approval. As Naomi accepted a warm greeting from the wedding coordinator and disappeared deeper into the ballroom, Ryan slowly released the breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He believed he had just seen the entire story. He had no idea the most important person in Naomi's life hadn't walked through those doors yet. The world is remarkably quick to mistake solitude for loneliness. It rarely pauses long enough to notice the quiet strength standing in front of it. The grand ballroom gradually settled into the comfortable rhythm of celebration as guests found their assigned tables beneath glowing crystal chandeliers. Fresh white lilies filled the air with a delicate fragrance while sunlight filtered through towering windows, painting soft golden patterns across the polished marble floor. Naomi Carter walked with measured grace behind the wedding coordinator. She neither hurried nor hesitated. Every step reflected a woman completely at peace with herself. Yet peace often confuses people who expect pain. Whispers drifted gently through the room. That's Ryan's ex-wife. I heard they divorced years ago. She looks beautiful. I thought she'd seem different. A woman quietly replied. Maybe she's just trying to hide it. Naomi heard the comments. Not every word. Enough to understand the assumptions. She simply smiled politely at a familiar bridesmaid who rushed over to greet her. Naomi, I'm so glad you came. I wouldn't have missed Emily's wedding. The bridesmaid embraced her warmly before glancing around. So, Naomi laughed softly. So, did anyone come with you? I arrived by myself. It was an honest answer. Unfortunately, honesty often leaves room for misunderstanding. Within moments, nearby conversations quietly shifted. So she really did come alone. I suppose she never remarried. Poor thing. I always liked her. Across the ballroom, Ryan couldn't help overhearing the same whispers. He glanced toward Naomi as she followed the coordinator deeper into the reception hall. Claire stood beside him. They seemed to feel sorry for her. Ryan answered quietly. People always create stories when they don't know the truth. Claire looked toward Naomi again. She doesn't seem like someone asking for sympathy. No. He watched Naomi thank a passing server, who offered her sparkling water. She doesn't. The coordinator eventually stopped near the back corner of the ballroom. I'm terribly sorry, Ms. Carter. Naomi looked around. The table overlooked a beautiful garden through floor-to-ceiling windows. A string quartet performed only a few yards away. Fresh flowers decorated every centerpiece. It appears this is the only table we have left. Naomi smiled warmly. It's lovely. The coordinator seemed relieved. Thank you for understanding. After taking her seat, Naomi greeted the elderly couple already sitting beside her. The gentleman extended his hand. First wedding here? She shook it gently. My first at this venue. His wife smiled. I've always believed the quiet tables have the best conversations. Naomi laughed. I hope you're right. They spoke easily, as though they had known one another much longer than 5 minutes. Nothing about Naomi suggested disappointment. Nothing suggested regret. She never glanced around searching for someone to notice her. She simply enjoyed the afternoon exactly as it unfolded. Across the ballroom, Ryan frowned almost imperceptibly. I thought she'd asked to move. Claire followed his gaze. Why would she? I don't know. He watched Naomi laughing softly with the elderly couple. I guess I expected. What? He searched for an answer that no longer sounded reasonable. I don't know anymore. Just then, unusual movement caught the attention of several guests near the ballroom entrance. Beyond the glass doors, 3 black luxury sedans rolled beneath the covered driveway one after another. The hotel owner immediately stepped outside. So did the general manager. Several senior executives quietly followed, straightening their jackets as though preparing to welcome someone of extraordinary importance. Inside the ballroom, conversations gradually slowed again. Who's arriving? Must be someone important. I've never seen the hotel owner greet anyone personally. Ryan instinctively looked toward the entrance. So did nearly everyone else. Only Naomi remained seated. She gently lifted her glass of sparkling water, her calm eyes briefly meeting the ballroom doors before the faintest. Smile touched her lips. Unlike everyone else in the room, she wasn't wondering who had just arrived. Sometimes the loudest entrance isn't made by the person everyone is watching. It is made by the one everyone suddenly stands up to greet. The murmurs inside the ballroom faded into an uneasy silence. Every conversation paused. Even the string quartet seemed quieter as dozens of curious eyes shifted toward the entrance beyond the glass doors. Outside, hotel attendants hurried into position with almost military precision. The general manager adjusted his tie. The executive chef emerged from the kitchen. Valets formed a respectful line beneath the covered entrance. Ryan frowned. I've never seen anything like this. Claire leaned closer. Maybe it's a celebrity. A guest behind them whispered. No. Celebrities don't usually make hotel owners nervous. Another businessman quietly added. Whoever it is, they're important. The first black sedan came to a smooth stop. Its engine fell silent. No one stepped out. Instead, A member of the security team calmly surveyed the entrance before nodding toward the second vehicle. The ballroom collectively held its breath. Ryan noticed several executives exchanging respectful smiles before anyone had even appeared. That alone told him everything. This wasn't ordinary wealth. This was influence. Meanwhile, Naomi remained exactly where she was. She continued chatting with the elderly couple seated beside her. Mrs. Henderson laughed warmly. "You don't seem very curious." Naomi smiled. "I already know who's arriving." The older woman tilted her head. "You do?" Naomi nodded gently. "I've been expecting him." Mrs. Henderson assumed she meant another wedding guest. She smiled and returned to her tea. Across the room, Ryan noticed Naomi hadn't even looked toward the entrance again. Something about that unsettled him. Everyone else seemed captivated. She seemed completely relaxed. Outside, the rear door of the second sedan finally opened. A tall man in a navy suit stepped out first. Not the guest. Security. He quietly scanned the surroundings before opening the rear passenger door. Several hotel executives immediately walked forward. The owner himself extended both hands in greeting. Ryan watched carefully but still couldn't see the arriving guest through the crowd gathering near the entrance. Claire whispered, "They're treating him like royalty." Ryan answered almost absent-mindedly, "Or someone richer." Inside, speculation spread from table to table. "I heard Harper Global has investors here today." "No, this has to be someone from Washington." "What if it's one of the Forbes billionaires?" The excitement grew with every passing second. Only Naomi seemed immune to it. She slowly reached into her handbag, glanced at her phone, and smiled after reading a brief message. Mrs. Henderson noticed. "Good news." Naomi locked her screen. "The best kind." "What did it say?" Naomi's smile softened. "I'm here. Nothing more. Nothing less." Across the ballroom, Ryan watched her expression change. It wasn't dramatic. There were no tears. No excitement. Only the quiet smile of someone whose favorite person had arrived exactly when promised. For reasons he couldn't explain, Ryan suddenly felt an unfamiliar knot tighten in his chest. Claire noticed him staring again. "You've been watching her a lot." "I know." "Why?" Ryan looked away. "I don't know." But that wasn't true. Some instinct kept telling him that Naomi knew something everyone else didn't. Outside, the welcoming party slowly began walking toward the ballroom doors. The crowd instinctively straightened. Several guests discreetly checked their jackets. Phones quietly disappeared into pockets. Conversations stopped completely. The heavy wooden doors opened once more. A ripple of anticipation swept across the room. Every head turned toward the entrance. Except Naomi's. She calmly placed her phone back into her purse before standing from her chair. Not because everyone else had. Because she knew exactly who was about to walk through those doors. And somewhere near the ballroom entrance, hidden behind the circle of executives and security personnel, a familiar pair of eyes had already found her long before anyone else in the room understood why. True power never announces itself. It simply walks into the room, and everyone else changes. Their posture. The ballroom doors opened without ceremony. No dramatic music. No spotlight. Only the quiet rhythm of polished shoes crossing marble. The conversations stopped on their own. Ryan finally caught sight of the man every executive had hurried to welcome. He appeared to be around 30. Tall. Composed. His tailored midnight blue suit carried no obvious designer logos. Yet every detail reflected understated perfection. His silver watch caught the afternoon light for only a second before disappearing beneath his cuff. Confidence followed him naturally. Not because he demanded attention. Because he had never needed to. The hotel owner walked half a step behind him. "So good to have you here, Mr. Bennett." "The pleasure is mine." His voice was calm. Almost effortless. Several guests exchanged puzzled looks. "Bennett? Who is he?" "I know that name." A businessman at the neighboring table quietly whispered, "Adrian Bennett." Another guest's eyes widened. "As in Bennett Capital?" The businessman nodded. "The founder." Silence spread even faster than before. Even those unfamiliar with finance recognized the reaction surrounding him. Ryan instinctively straightened his jacket. Claire leaned closer. "He's younger than I expected." Ryan nodded absent-mindedly. "I've read about him." "The billionaire?" "So they say." Across the ballroom, Adrian politely greeted several wedding guests before his eyes naturally searched the room. He wasn't looking for investors, or executives, or the bride and groom. His attention settled immediately on Naomi. His expression changed. Not dramatically, simply warmly. The reserved businessman everyone admired disappeared for a brief moment. In his place stood a man quietly happy to see someone he loved. Without hesitation, Adrian walked toward the back corner of the ballroom. The executives instinctively followed before realizing he no longer needed an escort. They respectfully stopped. Guests subtly stepped aside. A clear path formed almost without anyone realizing it. Ryan watched every step. Something inside him tightened. Claire noticed. He's walking toward someone. Ryan followed Adrian's line of sight. His heartbeat slowed, then stopped. Naomi stood as Adrian approached. Neither rushed forward. Neither embraced dramatically. They simply smiled. The kind of smile built through countless ordinary mornings together rather than grand romantic gestures. You made it. I promised I would. I'm a few minutes late. You've never truly been late. Naomi gently brushed an invisible speck of lint from his lapel. He laughed softly. I knew you'd notice. Their conversation remained almost private despite dozens of eyes watching. Nothing theatrical. Nothing performative. Just quiet familiarity. Mrs. Henderson looked between them with delight. So this is the gentleman you were expecting. Naomi smiled. Yes. She turned toward Adrian. I'd like you to meet Richard and Evelyn Henderson. Adrian immediately shook both of their hands. It's wonderful to meet you. Mrs. Henderson laughed. My dear, with the welcome you received outside, I expected someone impossible to approach. Adrian smiled. I hope I'm disappointing you. You certainly are. Everyone laughed gently. Across the ballroom, Ryan couldn't move. His mind searched desperately for another explanation. Perhaps they worked together. Perhaps they were old friends. Perhaps. Then Adrian reached naturally for Naomi's left hand. Not to display anything. Simply because it belonged in his. Sunlight reflected from the diamond resting on her finger. The ring Ryan had never seen. Claire quietly inhaled. Oh. Ryan stared at their joined hands. He had never imagined Naomi wearing another engagement ring. Especially one that looked like that. Especially beside a man like Adrian Bennett. The room slowly began connecting the pieces. They're together. No. They're engaged. Another guest corrected the whisper almost immediately. I don't think that's an engagement ring. What do you mean? He smiled quietly. Look at the wedding band beside it. Ryan's eyes dropped again. For the first time, he noticed the second ring. Simple. Elegant. Already worn. And in that single silent moment, he realized the billionaire standing beside Naomi wasn't the man she was going to marry. He was already her husband. The greatest shock is not discovering that someone became successful. It is discovering they found happiness without needing your apology. For several long seconds, the ballroom forgot the wedding. Every eye remained fixed on Naomi and Adrian. Not because they were putting on a performance. Because they weren't. There was no dramatic embrace. No attempt to impress the room. Only the effortless rhythm shared by two people who had built a life together long before anyone else noticed. Ryan stared at the simple wedding band resting beside Naomi's diamond. His thoughts became strangely quiet. Claire finally broke the silence. They're already married. Ryan swallowed. It looks that way. Across the room, whispers spread from one table to another. I thought she came alone. Apparently not. That's Adrian Bennett. The Adrian Bennett? I didn't know he was married. Neither did anyone else. An elderly guest smiled knowingly. Some people protect what they treasure. Meanwhile, Adrian gently pulled out Naomi's chair before taking the seat beside her. She smiled with quiet amusement. You still do that every time. I plan to keep doing it. For another 50 years? If you'll have me. She laughed softly. I already said yes. Mrs. Henderson couldn't hide her smile. You two make marriage look remarkably peaceful. Adrian glanced toward Naomi. Peace doesn't happen by accident. Naomi reached for his hand beneath the table. No, it's something you build. Their conversation remained ordinary. They asked about the Hendersons' grandchildren. They complimented the floral arrangements. They admired the violin quartet. Nothing about them suggested they knew half the ballroom was watching. Ryan found that impossible to understand. Years ago, Naomi used to worry about every opinion. She would spend hours making sure every dinner was perfect, every holiday flawless, every disagreement solved before bedtime. Now she looked lighter, freer, almost unrecognizable. Claire quietly observed him. You're comparing. Ryan looked away. I guess I am. You shouldn't. I know. but I can't help it. At that moment, the bride and groom approached Adrian's table. The groom extended both hands. Warmly, Adrian, Naomi, thank you for coming. We wouldn't miss today, Adrian replied. The bride embraced Naomi affectionately. I'm so happy both of you made time despite your schedule. Naomi smiled. We promised. The groom laughed. Actually, Adrian insisted. Adrian shrugged modestly. A promise should stay a promise. Several nearby guests exchanged surprised glances. One whispered, they know the couple personally. Another quietly replied, I think Adrian funded the children's hospital Emily works with. Someone else added, and Naomi serves on that foundation's board. Ryan heard every word. Foundation, board, hospital. The pieces refused to fit the version of Naomi he had carried in his memory. He remembered a woman rebuilding her life alone. Not one quietly helping lead charitable organizations beside one of America's most respected businessmen. Claire looked toward Naomi again. She seems different. Ryan answered without taking his eyes off his former wife. No. Claire frowned. What do you mean? He watched Naomi thank a server for refilling an elderly guest's water before pouring her own last. A gesture so small almost nobody noticed. Almost. Ryan did. He smiled sadly. She's exactly who she always was. Claire followed his gaze. I don't understand. I just never appreciated it. Before Claire could respond, the master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage and lightly tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, the ballroom gradually quieted once again. We would like to recognize a few special guests who have supported today's couple throughout their journey. Ryan expected family names, old friends, business partners. Instead, the MC smiled toward the back of the ballroom. Our first acknowledgement belongs to Mr. Adrian Bennett and his wife, Mrs. Naomi Bennett. For the first time that afternoon, every person in the room applauded not because of Adrian's wealth, but because they finally understood exactly who the elegant woman beside him had become. Respect is revealed most clearly by the way someone speaks about you when they have nothing to gain from doing so. The applause lingered for several moments before the wedding reception gently returned to its warm, celebratory rhythm. Musicians resumed their melody. Servers glided between tables with silver trays balanced effortlessly in their hands. Conversations slowly picked up again. But this time, nearly every conversation somehow circled back to the same couple seated near the rear of the ballroom. Not because Adrian Bennett encouraged attention. Quite the opposite. He seemed remarkably comfortable letting it drift elsewhere. As guests enjoyed the first course, the groom's father approached Adrian's table with two longtime business associates. Adrian, I hoped I'd have a chance to introduce you. Adrian immediately stood. The pleasure is mine. The older gentleman smiled. I've been telling them about the education initiative your foundation launched last year. Adrian shook his head gently. I should correct one thing. The three men looked at him. It wasn't my idea. His eyes naturally found Naomi. My wife designed the entire program. The businessmen turned toward her with visible surprise. Naomi smiled almost apologetically. It was a team effort. Adrian laughed softly. She always says that. One of the executives leaned forward. So the mentorship network reaching over 300 community clinics. Naomi nodded. Yes. You built it. I helped build it. And the scholarship program? She smiled. Our team did. The executive looked genuinely impressed. My daughter volunteers there every summer. Naomi's expression brightened. Then she's part of the reason it continues growing. Across the ballroom, Ryan quietly listened from only a few tables away. Each new conversation seemed to reveal another part of Naomi's life he had never imagined. Healthcare, scholarships, community partnerships, leadership. None of it sounded accidental. None of it sounded borrowed from Adrian's success. Claire folded her hands together. I thought people admired him. Ryan answered quietly. They do. She glanced toward Naomi. But they're talking about her. He nodded. They are. A few minutes later, an elderly woman approached Naomi carrying a walking cane. My dear. Naomi immediately stood. It's so good to see you. The woman embraced her warmly. I wanted to thank you again. Naomi smiled. You never have to thank me. I always will. Ryan watched with quiet curiosity. After the woman returned to her table, he overheard another guest explaining to someone nearby. That's Mrs. Lawson. The retired school principal? Yes. I heard Naomi personally organized the fundraising campaign that kept her literacy center open. Another voice joined, and Adrian donated after Naomi convinced him the project deserved a chance. Ryan slowly lowered his eyes. Years earlier, he remembered sitting across from Naomi as she passionately described ideas for community education and healthcare access. He had admired her compassion, but he had dismissed most of those dreams as unrealistic. Now those same dreams had become real enough for strangers to thank her years later. Meanwhile, Adrian quietly noticed Naomi's water glass was empty. Without interrupting her conversation, he reached for the nearby pitcher and gently refilled it before returning to his own meal. She smiled. "Thank you. You forgot to drink again." "I always do." "I know." The exchange lasted only seconds. Almost invisible. Yet Ryan couldn't stop watching. It wasn't the wealth. It wasn't the influence. It was the quiet attention, the kind that asked for nothing in return. As dessert was served, the master of ceremonies returned to the microphone. "Before we begin the evening's toasts," he smiled toward Adrian and Naomi. "The bride asked me to share one small story." The ballroom gradually fell silent again. The MC continued. 5 years ago, when Emily nearly canceled medical school because she couldn't afford tuition, someone quietly created an anonymous scholarship. Emily looked toward Naomi with grateful eyes. The donor refused every form of recognition. A brief pause settled across the room. The MC smiled. Only this year did Emily finally learn the scholarship had been created by Naomi Bennett and personally funded by Adrian Bennett. No one applauded immediately. Some moments deserved silence before celebration. Across the ballroom, Ryan looked at Naomi once more. For the first time since their divorce, he understood a truth that hurt far more than regret. She had never needed someone to rescue her. She had only needed someone willing to believe in the dreams he had once been too busy to hear. The hardest apology to hear is the one life delivers without saying a single word. As the applause faded, laughter gradually returned to the ballroom. The newlyweds moved from table to table thanking family members, while soft jazz replaced the classical quartet that had accompanied the ceremony. Candlelight flickered against crystal glassware, filling the room with a quiet warmth that seemed untouched by the emotional undercurrent still lingering beneath every conversation. Ryan barely noticed the music. His attention kept drifting toward Naomi, not because she was trying to stand out, because she wasn't. She laughed easily with strangers. She listened more than she spoke. Every few minutes, Adrian would lean toward her to quietly share a thought, and she would answer with the relaxed smile of someone completely at home beside the person she loved. Nothing about them looked rehearsed. It simply looked real. Claire gently rested her hand on Ryan's arm. "You've been quiet." "I know. Are you thinking about her?" Ryan hesitated. "I'm thinking about the version of her I thought I knew." Claire looked across the room. "I don't think anyone becomes this person overnight." "No." He lowered his eyes. "They become this person one choice at a time." Meanwhile, one of the bride's younger cousins accidentally bumped into a waiter, sending a tray of champagne glasses crashing onto the marble floor. The loud sound instantly silenced nearby conversations. The young boy froze. His face turned pale. I'm sorry." Before any employee could react, Naomi was already kneeling beside him. "Hey." The boy looked as though he might cry. "It was an accident." She smiled reassuringly. "Accidents happen." Adrian quietly accepted a stack of linen napkins from a server and began helping gather the broken pieces without drawing attention to himself. Several guests instinctively offered assistance as well. Within moments, the situation had passed. No embarrassment, no raised voices, only kindness. The frightened boy whispered, "I ruined everything." Naomi gently shook her head. "No, you just gave everyone a chance to help." His shoulders slowly relaxed. Across the ballroom, Ryan watched the scene unfold with an ache he couldn't explain. Years ago, moments like that had happened countless times. A forgotten reservation, a broken dish, a stressful afternoon. Naomi had always been the first person to calm everyone else before worrying about herself. He had admired that quality. Eventually, he had stopped noticing it altogether. The bride approached Naomi a few minutes later and embraced her tightly. "I heard what happened." Naomi smiled. "It was nothing." It meant everything to that little boy. The bride stepped back and looked at both Naomi and Adrian. "You two always seem to make people feel safe." Adrian glanced toward his wife. "She taught me that." Naomi laughed softly. I definitely did not. You did. You simply paid attention. Their eyes met for only a moment. No elaborate declaration. Just quiet certainty. Nearby, an elderly businessman who had known Adrian for years smiled knowingly. I've watched Adrian negotiate billion-dollar acquisitions. He looked toward Naomi. I've never seen him happier than when he's looking at you. The table laughed warmly. Adrian answered without hesitation. That's because this is the best investment I've ever made. Naomi playfully nudged his arm. People aren't investments. No. He smiled. They're blessings. Even Ryan couldn't help smiling at the exchange. Not because it was clever, because it was sincere. For the first time that evening, he finally understood what had made Naomi different from the beginning. She hadn't changed because she married a billionaire. She had simply found someone who valued the qualities he had once taken for granted. As the evening continued, guests no longer whispered about Adrian's fortune. They spoke about Naomi's generosity, her grace, her quiet leadership, and somehow, that seemed to impress everyone even more. Ryan slowly looked toward the ballroom windows, where the last light of sunset had begun to fade. He had arrived believing success could be measured by who stood beside him. Now, watching Naomi surrounded by genuine respect instead of admiration for wealth, he realized he had misunderstood success all along. Some people spend their lives chasing recognition. Others quietly become unforgettable without ever asking to be seen. The most powerful victory is the one that leaves no loser, only someone finally forced to face the truth. Dinner had given way to dancing. The ballroom lights dimmed until they glowed like candlelight, casting soft reflections across polished marble and crystal chandeliers. Couples slowly gathered on the dance floor while the band traded elegant jazz for timeless love songs. The bride and groom shared the first dance. Applause followed. Then parents. Then families. Soon, the master of ceremonies smiled into the microphone. We'd like to invite all married couples to join the celebration. One by one, guests rose from their seats. Some had been together for months, others for decades. Adrian stood and extended his hand toward Naomi. May I? She smiled as though he had asked her the same question 1,000 times. You never have to. Their fingers met naturally, not dramatically, simply as though they belonged there. Ryan watched them step onto the dance floor. Claire quietly remained seated. You don't want to dance? Ryan shook his head. Not tonight. The music began. Adrian rested one hand gently against Naomi's back while she placed hers lightly on his shoulder. Neither seemed interested in performing. They barely noticed anyone watching. Instead, they smiled at one another with the quiet familiarity of two people who had already shared countless ordinary evenings together. Halfway through the song, Naomi laughed softly. What? Adrian smiled. You missed a button. She glanced at his jacket. I did. Without hesitation, she reached up and fastened it while he remained perfectly still. Such a tiny gesture, almost invisible, yet somehow more intimate than the grandest declaration. Across the ballroom, Ryan lowered his eyes. He remembered another evening years ago, a company banquet. His tie had come loose moments before he walked onto a stage. Naomi had quietly fixed it without saying a word. He had barely thanked her. Back then, he believed there would always be another tomorrow, another dinner, another anniversary, another chance. Life had quietly proven otherwise. As the music ended, applause filled the room once more. The newlyweds returned to the center of the dance floor. Before introducing the next song, the groom picked up the microphone. I'd like to say something before tonight ends. The ballroom gradually became still. He smiled toward Adrian and Naomi. 5 years ago, when Emily and I almost canceled our wedding plans because life became overwhelming, two people reminded us that marriage isn't measured by the size of the celebration. Emily gently squeezed his hand. The groom continued. They showed us that love is measured by kindness repeated every ordinary day. He looked directly at Naomi. You never try to teach us with speeches. Then toward Adrian. You simply live that example. Emily wiped away a quiet tear. We wouldn't be standing here today without both of you. The room erupted into heartfelt applause. Not polite applause. Grateful applause. Ryan joined in. Slowly. Honestly. As the applause faded, Adrian leaned toward Naomi. You embarrassed? A little. I know. She smiled. You? Very. They laughed together. Nothing theatrical. Nothing forced. Just genuine affection. Ryan realized something that struck deeper than every revelation earlier that evening. People admired Adrian because of what he had achieved, but they respected Naomi because of who she had always been. And Adrian loved her for exactly the same reason. Claire finally spoke. "I think I understand now." Ryan looked toward her. Understand what? She didn't marry someone richer. She paused. She married someone who noticed her. Ryan closed his eyes for a brief moment. There was no anger left. No jealousy. Only a quiet acceptance that some endings are not punishments. They are invitations to become better people. Across the ballroom, Naomi looked toward Ryan for the first time in nearly an hour. Their eyes met. She offered the same calm, gracious smile she had given every guest that evening. No triumph. No resentment. No lingering bitterness. Only peace. Ryan returned the smile. Not because he expected forgiveness. Not because he hoped for another chance. But because, at last, he understood that the greatest thing he had lost was never his marriage. It was the extraordinary woman he had failed to recognize while she was still standing beside him. The greatest revenge is never making someone regret losing you. It is giving yourself a life so full that regret no longer matters. The evening slowly drew to a close. Outside, the last guests gathered beneath strings of warm lights stretching across the garden terrace. Laughter drifted into the cool night air, while chauffeurs opened car doors and valets retrieved polished black sedans from the circular driveway. Inside the ballroom, the staff quietly cleared the final tables. The celebration was ending. So was something else. Ryan stood alone near the entrance, his hands resting inside his pockets as he watched people say their goodbyes. For hours, he had searched for a reason to explain everything he had witnessed. Luck, money, timing. But none of those explanations survived the evening. Because every person who approached Naomi spoke about the same things. Her kindness, her generosity, her character. None of those qualities had appeared after meeting Adrian. They had always been there. He simply hadn't valued them enough when they still belonged to his everyday life. Claire quietly stepped beside him. "I called a car." He nodded. "Thank you." She hesitated before speaking again. "I don't think you're still in love with her." Ryan looked toward Naomi one last time. "No." "What then?" He smiled sadly. "I think I'm mourning the man I used to be." Claire understood. She gently squeezed his hand before walking toward the exit. Across the terrace, Naomi thanked the bride's parents before wrapping her light shawl around her shoulders. The evening breeze carried the scent of roses through the garden. Adrian approached, holding her coat. "You'll be cold." "I'm fine." "I know." He smiled. "But let me take care of you anyway." She laughed softly as he helped her into the coat. "You're impossible." "So I've been told." Before reaching the waiting car, Naomi noticed Ryan standing several yards away. For a brief moment, the noise of departing guests seemed to disappear. Only quiet remained. Ryan slowly walked toward them. Adrian respectfully stepped back, without saying a word. Ryan looked directly at Naomi. "You look happy." She answered honestly. "I am. I'm glad." Neither of them rushed to fill the silence. Some conversations no longer needed explanations. After several seconds, Ryan spoke again. "I owe you an apology." Naomi gently shook her head. "You don't owe me anything." "I do." His voice remained calm. "I spent years believing success meant being admired." He glanced toward Adrian before returning his attention to her. "Tonight, I realized it means becoming someone worthy of admiration." Naomi's eyes softened. "I hope you find that." "I think I finally know where to begin." She smiled. Not because the past had disappeared, but because it no longer controlled either of them. Ryan extended his hand. She accepted it. A simple handshake. Nothing more. Nothing less. When they let go, there was no unfinished chapter waiting to be reopened. Only two people walking in different directions with genuine peace. Adrian quietly joined Naomi once again. "Ready?" She slipped her hand into his. "Always." Together, they walked toward the waiting car beneath the glow of golden lights. Ryan remained where he was until the vehicle disappeared beyond the gates. Then he looked up at the night sky and smiled to himself. Not every love story ends with two people staying together. Sometimes it ends with one person finally learning how to become better because of the one they lost. As the wedding venue grew quiet, the empty dance floor reflected the last remaining lights from the chandeliers above. The music had ended. The celebration was over. Yet the evening left behind something far more lasting than memories. It left proof that dignity never needs revenge. It only needs time. Because Naomi had never returned to show Ryan what he had lost. She had returned simply as the woman she had become. And in doing so, she gave him the one gift he never expected. The truth. She didn't win him back. She won herself.